Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Chat EbT. I'm your host, Mohamed Ebrahim Tayob, and I'm here at Exclusive Books, Sandton, for a very, very special episode of the podcast. We have a book launch that is happening right here this evening with a previous guest of the show, Mr. Yusuf Bodiat. Let's go and have a chat with him. Hi there, and welcome back to a very special episode of Chat EbT. I'm Mohamed Ebrahim Tayob, your host, and I have with me Mr. Yusuf Bodiat, the author of his very own book, The Bottom Line, that is releasing today as we're recording this. Yusuf, so nice to have you back again, man.
It's only a pleasure. Thank you.
So before we start, just as a reminder to the guests, and we'll put the link on the screen, Yusuf was actually a previous guest on our show. He was, I think, episode 5 of the podcast. And during that episode, I don't know if you recall, I actually asked you a very interesting question. I have a clip here that I want you to see. You can just hit play there when you're ready.
Thank you.
As I say that, I understand, before we end, you actually are writing a book as we speak. So, not an autobiography, but obviously you're still writing a book.
Yeah, so it's in the infancy stages at the moment. It's a non-fiction business South African book. Hopefully within the next couple of months I can have it published. Something I'm quite passionate about. For those who know me, I don't read a lot, but I do like to write a lot. So the LinkedIn posts are daily, and the articles come in every couple of weeks. But I found there's a specific topic that I'm very passionate about, and I've been getting a lot of different pieces of information to put that in together, to put it into a book format. Because I found that a short post or a decent-sized article just doesn't cut it for the specific topic that I'm thinking about. So hopefully, all else equal, that comes out in the next couple of months, and I'm extremely excited about it.
I was actually looking at the interview yesterday, and I saw that, and I was like, oh, no, okay, I have to show you that. But yeah, so we finally here, man. We spoke about it, in June last year. Finally, how does it feel to be here at Exclusive Books the day of your launch?
I must say, it feels surreal. Walking into the bookstore this morning, seeing my books on display, seeing a poster up behind the counter, sitting here with you, speaking about it with an actual book in our hands, it doesn't feel real yet. I think it needs to still sink in properly.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So, in previous interviews, you've talked about your inspiration behind the book. We've spoken about it a little bit, how it evolved from your LinkedIn posts and articles that evolved into The Bottom Line, right?
Yeah.
I want to actually ask you, and the reason why I'm asking this is a lot of people have these ideas. A lot of people, want to write a book or, take a particular venture. But it's always very, very difficult. As I've said before on the episodes, on the podcast rather, it's always been very difficult from that 0 to 1. That's the most difficult part, right? So tell us a little bit about that. I know you had the inspiration and you had the idea, but what was that moment where you said, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this, and put pen to paper, so to say.
I like your analogy about 0 to 1, because starting from 0, moving to 1 is always the most difficult part. And I find for me, once I get from 0 to 1, moving on, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
So the background to the book, maybe if I can just touch on that, is I wrote an article in about April or May in 2025, speaking about what would a finance minister do if he was a CFO to run the country in a certain way. And I was very passionate about the topic, not because I thought about the topic at that point in time. It's been a thought of mine for many, many years, part of many discussions at boardrooms over coffee, informally and formally.
Yeah.
And when I published the article, I realized the article didn't do justice to what I was thinking about. And I thought about it long and hard to say, okay, how do I take this short article and put it into a long form type of piece, not knowing it would be a book. And the book idea probably popped up in my mind subconsciously, but the weekend before I started writing the book, or putting pen to paper, as you say, I got 2 separate phone calls from 2 friends, totally unrelated to anything that we're speaking about today. And both of them, as part of the introductions to the conversation, asked, Yusuf, so when's the book coming out? Or Yusuf, when are you writing a book? We're keen to see something.
I love that.
Those are 2 very subtle messages that people shared with me that says, okay, maybe all of the content that I'm putting out, all of the thoughts and articles and ideas need to be put in a more longer form. So that was the trigger point for me to say, I need to write the book. And literally on that weekend, the first weekend in May 2025, I sat with my computer, not physically pen to paper, but I sat and I told myself, I'm going to put this into a book. And that's where the journey actually began.
So before I dive into some of the topics, I have some notes here that I made while I was reading, but before I dive into it, for those people that are hearing about the book for the first time, give us a little elevator pitch of the book itself.
So the book is called The Bottom Line, a CFO's Blueprint for South Africa's Turnaround. And the reason for writing the book and the message that I wanted to convey is that we're living in a country where things are not the way it's supposed to be. We have so much potential in the country, so much ambition and so many good ideas, but we fail to deliver on those ideas. And the book is meant to unpack all of those good ideas. It's meant to explain the problems that we have, but more importantly, it's meant to explain some of the solutions that I came up with or that we could use to fix the problems that we have in the country. So the ultimate purpose of the book is to give hope and to make change as we go along.
No, brilliant. I love that. Right. So a very big part of the book is built on SA Inc., the company around South Africa, rebuilding the trust of the public. Right.
Yeah.
In the book, you mentioned that this takes time, and unfortunately, it's not a quick fix. It's not an overnight fix. It can sometimes even be, the word you used in the book was generational fix. Right. I completely agree with you on this. Right. However, it does create a little bit of a catch-22. I feel that in order to earn back the trust of the people, we first need to actually show that drastic change, right? Not only in execution and results, but in the culture as well. But unfortunately, these drastic changes need the public's trust, right? So as you can see, it creates that little bit of a circle, right? We need to improve the public's trust. We can only do that by making drastic changes. But in order to do the drastic changes, we need to have the public's trust.
Yes.
How do we navigate that conundrum?
So definitely some of the fixes are generational fixes. We can't get away from that, right? And it's going to take many years and decades to fix certain of the problems over time. But there are a few quick wins. Some of them are small scale, others are big scale. And if I can explain maybe both ends of the spectrum. The small scale one is if there's a broken traffic light, we shouldn't be waiting for 3 months for that traffic light to be fixed. It needs to be fixed the day after or 2 days after at the most. And more important than that, once it's fixed, it shouldn't break a week after that. And by building trust in a small way, I know for a fact that if I have to report a broken traffic light as an easy example, it's going to take a few weeks before it's fixed.
Yeah.
Whereas the change is easy, perhaps, fix it immediately and get along with it. Right? The bigger spectrum one is there's so much corruption in government and public and private sector. And I think it's so sad that we know that there's corruption happening and nothing really happens about it.
Yeah.
And it's probably easier for us to sit here at a bookstore and talk about it over coffee. It's maybe a bit more difficult in practice, but I do believe that those people who are corrupt should go through the legal process properly and sent to jail if need be. And I say that in a very specific way, not just putting people in jail because we believe they're corrupt. They need to go through the legal system, and the law needs to take its course, but it needs to be a fair legal process. So not just because the person is influential, they'll get an easy way out. And it needs to be an efficient and cost-effective legal process. So we wouldn't want to see court cases that are going on for months and years that's wasting taxpayers' money. So for me, those are the quick wins that we could do now to build the public trust so that when we are doing those generational changes, the public is already beginning to build the trust. Because remember, trust is not earned in a week or a month or a year. It's built over time, but it's in small pieces.
No, and as I mentioned, I fully agree with you. I think, from all aspects, like one of the things I love you mentioned was tax, right? I think a lot of people are very hesitant. Well, obviously you have to pay your tax, right? But people are not happy paying it because obviously they feel like that money is not going towards something.
Yeah.
And generally people are not always going to be happy about money leaving their pockets, but if they know that it's going to a really good cause, I think it will be a bit of an easier pill to swallow, right?
Yeah.
So I think the way to do that is, unfortunately, we have to rebuild the public trust because right now it's not there.
Yeah, I think when it comes to tax, I think the part that I really struggle with is we pay so much tax. And as much as the tax is used in certain ways to improve service delivery and the way in which the country is run, there's a lot of parts where we don't get to see or it's wasted directly. Yeah. Right? And I unpack it in a certain chapter of the book where we speak about the double tax that we pay. And maybe just to unpack that in a few steps is that we may pay tax that's supposed to go to public hospitals and policing and education, but many people are forced, or many people choose to get private security to look after their community. They go to a private hospital and pay medical aid, and they send their kids to a fee-paying school where all of those services should be for free because our taxes are contributing to pay for that. So we are actually paying double indirectly because some of the costs that we are spending on private sector should be covered by the government itself. The other part that I really struggle with is there's many individuals who pay tax almost at the highest level, so people can pay tax up to 45%. Yeah. But there's an article that I reference in the book which says that some people actually pay an effective tax of over 60%.
And that's
if you account for all the private tax
you
they're
account
paying
for the value added tax, the fuel levies, all of the other small taxes that are added on, as well as that indirect taxes that I spoke about, so the private security and the
Private
hospitals,
schooling, yeah.
etc., etc. So taxes are not only the money that we pay to SARS at the end of the financial cycle, it's all of those other costs that we're incurring as well.
No, fully agree. I actually, funny enough, I actually have a note on that, and it's based on a quote that you actually had in the book, right? We are not simply paying more, we are paying twice. First, through taxes and tariffs, then again through private alternatives, many of which are unaffordable for most South Africans. This isn't just inefficient, it's unjust. And I actually thought of a very interesting topic with regards to this, and I wanted to actually talk to you about it from a CFO mindset, right? Because that's essentially what you're trying to do with the book, right? So from the CFO mindset, one of the examples I got was solar panels, right?
Yeah.
So a great example right now is a lot of people are putting in solar panels in private homes, in businesses, so on and so forth, right? Obviously because of load shedding, obviously because the grid is very stretched and resulting in load shedding, and people want to still continue their businesses, people still want to continue their regular lives, so they install these in their homes. Now, recently we find out that you have to register solar panels and even pay a tax on having solar panels. Now, I can get that from a income perspective, right? So obviously, people are not using as much electricity, government is not getting as much money, bottom line is getting affected.
Yes.
Okay, let's put in a tax. But at the end of the day, there is other benefits for the government in the sense of people are now taking a little bit more pressure off the grid, but now are being penalized for it. So from a CFO perspective rather, yes, the money is leaving your account, but there is other benefits as well. And I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, so that is such an interesting question. There's so many ways to unpack
Yeah.
it. So I'm going to try and unpack it in a few ways for us. So the first part is we should be installing solar panels as much as possible, not because the grid is collapsing and not because Eskom is not supplying the electricity to us, but because of climate change, right?
Very true.
That is the reason for solar panels, not because we are scared that load shedding is going to hit us when we least expect it. However, South Africans put solar panels on, or South Africans are considering installing solar panels just because we are scared of a grid collapse.
Yeah.
So the purpose of solar panels for us, firstly, is flawed completely. Then with respect to Eskom, whether businesses or individuals install solar panels, it's helping the grid in its entirety, yes, but the challenge that Eskom would have is those who are installing solar panels are the ones who are paying for the electricity, because there's a big chunk or big part of the nation that don't pay for electricity. And those are the ones who actually can't afford to install the solar panels. So what happens now is you have a portion of the grid that's no longer requiring supply, but they are actually the ones who are contributing the biggest to the income of Eskom. So those who are left to actually get the energy from Eskom are the ones who don't contribute. So there's actually a double hit to Eskom here, because apart from losing some customers, their income generation is actually impacted a lot more.
Yeah, true.
Looking back at that tariff that they want to charge, so I fully agree that there should be some sort of way to regulate the solar panels, because we wouldn't want people to install solar panels and they don't know what they're doing and the solar panels burn the house down. I mean, in the worst case scenario. So there should be a way to register people who are installing solar panels and keep track of who is on the grid and who is off the grid. So we can have a good estimate of how much power is required by the country and how much is being used as part of the grid and how much is being used because of solar. The problem I have with that draft legislation or those ideas is that Eskom would be responsible for getting the for registering and monitoring and managing that whole system. Now, it's a bit contradictory that the people who are losing the income because of the solar are the ones who are actually going to charge the tariff or the fee or the levy to those who are not using their service anymore. So it should be totally separate from Eskom. A totally separate division or department should be looking after that. So I agree with the fact that we should be registering our solar panels, but I don't agree that we should be paying a tax firstly to start with, and Eskom should not be involved in managing that process because they are a direct competitor.
Yeah, because I think, to follow on that, I think a lot of people with that are feeling like they are being penalized for paying twice, right? As you mentioned, paying twice, obviously you have to pay for your electricity bill, now you have to pay for actually installing solar panels, and now I have to pay a tax on top of that because the government isn't able to provide enough electricity. So I think I like the way you put that, is that, you know, in an auditing term, because I know you'd appreciate that, there's obviously that self-interest, right?
Yeah.
that's there. And I agree with you. Maybe it is something that needs to be maybe better implemented and maybe without ESCOM involvement, and hopefully then you'd be able to get the public buy-in, because I think that is, again, very important. One thing you mentioned a little bit earlier is your use of case studies in the book, right? I got to be honest, I absolutely love this, because I'm a person that I learn by examples. So, whenever somebody is telling me something, I always ask them, would you mind giving me an example of what I did, so that I can, I feel like I register better with it. And I thoroughly enjoyed reading the case studies, because I think it gave those real world examples. I mean, you have an entire chapter in the book that's dedicated to case studies of examples of countries other than South Africa that have had similar issues, and how they got out of it. And then you also have some case studies about our SOEs in the country. I absolutely love this, because again, it gave us those real world examples. Was this the intention with the use of case studies?
So firstly, thank you. I do appreciate that you enjoyed the case studies as much as I did. So it was the intention, and I really enjoyed the case studies. The reason for it was because as part of writing the book, I needed to do research. And as part of the research, you look at case studies. And what better way to explain my book than by using a case study instead. So I used two broad types of case studies. So there are 15 case studies in total. Some are local. So I've used SAA, SARS, the SABC, because I thought it's good to bring case studies that are close to home.
Yeah.
And all of them are institutions that had good times and bad. So it wasn't a case of just looking at a case study because it's bad or because it's good. All of those three that I mentioned actually have good and bad in them. Right. The other part that I thought was really useful and I enjoyed a lot was international case studies. So I used countries like Greece, Brazil, India, Indonesia, and Botswana, which is literally our neighbor, just to show how others also adapted to change. So all of the case studies shows a problem or a challenge that they had, how they overcame it, but also importantly, what challenges they still have and how they are still continuing to overcome those challenges. And hopefully we can learn from them. I don't believe the case studies should be copied or duplicated or replicated, but it should be a way for us to learn from the mistakes of others.
Yeah, I like the way you put that, actually. I think a big thing is we need to learn from our own mistakes, but I think equally important, we need to learn from the mistakes of others. And in those international examples you had, yes, we can't copy them exactly because every situation is unique, but there is that little bit of a blueprint that gives us a sort of guide to follow.
Yeah, and look, we can learn from our mistakes. I don't think we have the time or the energy to learn from our mistakes. And maybe just to give a snippet of one, the case study on India speaks about how the entire Indian population has been digitized. 1 billion people has been put onto a digital platform. And if India with 1 billion people can do that, who's to say South Africa can't, in its own way that's suitable for us, do something similar?
No, I agree. Fully agree. Again, in some of your previous interviews, and I think on social media, you mentioned that your favorite chapter of the book is winning like the Springboks, right?
Yeah.
I gotta say, and I'm not saying this just because it's yours, it actually was my favorite chapter as well. And I think a lot of people, when they read the book, are really gonna resonate with that. Because I think you mentioned a lot in the book, mindset and culture. And I think the best examples of these come from sport, right? We see all this great examples throughout history, whether it be soccer, whether it be the FIFA World Cup here in South Africa, whether it's the Springbok rugby team, as we mentioned. They teach us the best examples of mindset and culture. But are these examples transferable to the public market, the private industry, government?
Yeah, so I think when we look at any sports case study as an example, at face value, it's just a sports case study. It makes us feel good about sport and ourselves. But as we dig into it deeper, there are so many lessons about leadership, about change, about resilience that we can learn from these case studies. So I really enjoyed the chapter on the Springboks. Interestingly enough, it was one of the first chapters I wrote in the book. Okay. So I didn't write the book in sequence from chapter 1 to the end. Chapter 10 was one of the first chapters I wrote. And as much as we all know that the Springboks are the best team in the world currently, they are the favorites to win the upcoming World Cup, and they are undefeatable. They really struggle to win games. So the games are so close. And I unpack it where we look at the last World Cup. Every single knockout game was won by 1 point and 1 point only. But the part that I really enjoyed about it is not looking at our current team. It's the team from 1995 where the odds were against us. On paper, theoretically, we were not meant to win the World Cup. We were not meant to win the first game, and we did that. And that comes back to the whole system that has been developed around it, the leadership that we had at the time and the leadership that we have now. And look, I can speak about this case study at length, but I'd like people to actually read it for themselves. It just shows that we can use sports examples in the business world to learn from what they do well and adapt it in the way that we need for our businesses as well.
You know, you mentioned succession planning, right? And there's a particular part of the book where you speak about our previous public protector, Tuli Madonsela,
Yes.
right? One of the greatest public officials we've had, in the government. But unfortunately, and we look at her as a great example, but unfortunately, past her point, just didn't work out as great. And I think it comes back to that. The succession planning might not be there. If we had to look at a real world example, right, not in a particular person, but I always love looking at the FIFA World Cup. South Africa was at its best at that time. That month was probably the best month I've ever had in our country, not because there was a big tournament here, but because the country worked for an entire month. But after that, everything just sort of went back to the status quo. And I think it comes back to that succession planning. Yes, we have this amazing people sometimes in the right places. We have an amazing push in service delivery, but then there's no sort of plan after that.
Yeah, and I think I did not unpack it in the book because I think the other part that I realized is there's so much more to share. I needed to stop at some point.
Yeah.
Or so many more ideas that we
100%.
could think about. And as we have more discussions, more ideas come out. If we think about the role of the public protector, that is a role where people apply and it's for a fixed term. And after the term is finished, people apply again. Why not build a system where the same like a corporate would? And that's why it's the SA Inc. is the example where I say run the country like a business would. Build up people from the ground up. Get them at the ground level, teach them how the processes work, and develop your skills internally, instead of looking for people from outside to come in and change the system. I mean, we speak about the credibility and building public trust. Tuli Madonsela did such good work to build the credibility and public trust. And soon after she left, I mean, all of that, or not all of it, a lot of it has been gone now.
But again, it comes back to that. To use the CFO example, if you had Yusuf Bodiat running X Inc., right, and does a brilliant job, but never ever looks to that day when he's going to retire and somebody else is going to take the role. Now we're asking somebody, hey, you're going to be the next CFO. You've never worked under the previous CFO. You don't really know what his plans were, what his strategy was. He's gone. You taking the job tomorrow. It doesn't really work like that.
No, we speak about legacy often, everywhere. People always speak about leaving a legacy. If you are in a role today for the next 5 or 10 years and you leave there, in 50 years' time, nobody would remember what you did there. But if you have built that legacy, whoever is looking after that seat or that position that you had 50 years ago, however other many people looked after it over time, would be continuing that legacy that you built.
So you mentioned legacy. And one of the things I really loved, if we go to one of the inserts that you had at the back of the book, is the Smart Start Pledge. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So Smart Start is an early childhood development organization, and they do the most amazing work by looking after small kids, where they don't have people to look after them in the day when their parents are working. That's just the background behind. And there's lots of information on Smart Start in the book, and they've got a website. But for me, I was fortunate enough to work with Smart Start in a previous job and go on site visits and explore with them what they actually do. And it's amazing the amount of good work that's going out there. And I felt it would have been such a missed opportunity for me not to give back as part of this journey. So the pledge in the book is that for every book I sell, I will donate 10 Rand to Smart Start. It sounds like a little bit of money, and even if I were to sell 1,000 books in one day, that's not going to change the dial for Smart Start completely. But for me, the fact that we're speaking about early childhood development, the fact that we are speaking about Smart Start gets people informed, and awareness is the main part of the whole Smart Start pledge, to leave the legacy so that those who are capable and able to contribute to Smart Start in their, or not Smart Start, just early childhood development in their own meaningful way, can actually continue this whole cycle that we're trying to achieve of making the country better.
Keeping on the topic of legacy, what would you like the legacy of the bottom line, and further to that, Yusuf Bodiat's legacy to be with regards to this book?
So for me, launching the book is not the end of the journey. It's actually the end of chapter 1. Right, we are having a conversation today. Later on this afternoon or evening, we are going to have the official book launch where the conversation continues. And for me, the legacy is that this conversation just continues and gets bigger and better and enhances over time. Right, so for me, I've only scraped the surface of this in the book, And as the conversation develops, we can unpack the problems a lot more. But that's not where it stops. We can't just be speaking about the problems. There needs to be meaningful change because of the ideas and the discussions that come out of this book.
And lastly, where can we actually buy the book?
So for those who want to go into a bookstore, it's available at exclusive books nationwide. You also can get the ebook version on Kindle and all other ebook platforms. There's a link on my website to get it, and just an easy Google search can do that. And there's also available on my website. So if you're ordering on my website within South Africa, free delivery within a few days as well.
No, Yusuf, firstly, thank you so much for making time for us today. I know it's a big day for you, finally here at the launch of the book, but really thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed the book. It was exceptional. I learned so much from it, so thank you on that note. But really, on behalf of the whole team at Chat EbT, we really wish you all the best and all the success with regards to this book. And I say this, we cannot wait to see the next chapter, as you put it, of this journey.
It's been an amazing journey, and thank you so much for being part of it.
No, my absolute privilege, I'm going to say. Before we leave, and I actually, this was part of the clip that I did not include, but one of the things I said on our last episode, that when the book launches, I'm going to ask for a signed copy. So I'm going to ask you to please sign this for me, because I'd love to keep it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
No, pleasure is all mine. Thank you very, very much. Yeah, Yusuf, once again, thank you, and best of luck on today and the future with regards to the bottom line.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's our show. Like I said, this has been such an amazing experience. The first ever book launch interview that I've done. So from Chat EbT, always, that's a first, and I'm very, very happy about that. Thank you once again for joining us. My name is Mohamed Ebrahim Tayob. You're watching Chat EbT. Until next time.